Alright, so the kombucha has been going for a couple weeks now, and I think it is time to bottle. We've been tasting it pretty frequently to make sure it's developing the right way as we want it to. If you remember from the last kombucha video, the scobies were pretty small, but now they have grown quite a bit. Almost double their size. One of the harder decisions that you have to make when bottling your kombucha is what flavors would go well with your ferment. So after tasting it a couple times and looking at some store-bought kombucha flavors, I think we finally figured out something that would go perfect with it.
So before we do any bottling, we first gotta drain the finished kombucha. This is the main reason that I added the spigot. Rather than removing the SCOBY and then transferring it to another jar, I can leave it in and just take what I need. It might be a good idea to wash my jar occasionally though, to keep anything harmful from growing. Because we've been to Spain, I couldn't help but take the opportunity to pour the kombucha like they pour their sidra, from up high. So like I was saying, after looking at some store-bought kombucha for inspiration, there was a particular flavor that caught my eye: hopped grapefruit kombucha. After tasting it, I knew we can make something better. So first, I started with dried hops. With only a little bit of beer brewing experience, I'm not too familiar with the whole hopping process, but I went ahead anyway with what I thought would work. I put about half of the hops into a hop bag and left them in the kombucha to soak for a couple of days. I don't really know if this was a popular method, but the idea was to, with time, extract the flavor from the hops. In the meantime, we gotta make the next batch of kombucha. This time, I'm using some local black tea. As much as I liked the last tea that we used, it didn't really go well with the fermented taste that comes with the drink. That's one of the things I enjoy most with kombucha. You can take a lot of liberties with the flavorings and the teas that you use. After the first couple of days, you can see the amount of bubbles that are already starting to form. We've had lots of fun taking a light to it and watching the development. Okay, so back to the hops. After a couple of days, I took it down and tasted it, and to my disappointment, there was little to no added hop flavor. I didn't expect too much, but I thought after leaving it for 3 additional days, there would be more notes of hops. So this time, I studied up a little bit on better methods to add the flavor. To start, I took 500 milliliters of boiling water and added 5 grams of hops and let it steep for 1 hour. Since water evaporates, every once in a while I'm adding back some water to keep a good level. After the hour, I removed it from the heat and added 10 more grams of hops. I learned that this is called the aromatic hopping phase, which will bring out the aroma of the hops. After 4 minutes, I'm adding in 13 more grams of hops and letting them brew for an additional minute. Now we have hopped concentrate. It was extremely bitter but carried that hop flavor I was looking for. We got the hops, now it's time for the grapefruit. I took the juice from 6 grapefruits and saved some of the rinds for later. Since I wasn't following a recipe, I just had to guess the right measurements, hoping it wasn't going to overpower it. After juicing a couple of these by hand, it made me realize a juicer would be something to consider in the future. Now with all our parts prepared, it was time to assemble them. This is where you can take a lot of liberties and add whatever amount of the flavorings you want. I ended up with about 3 cups of grapefruit juice and added all of it. I added all of the hop concentrate as well. I really wanted the hops to shine in the finished product. It is, after all, called hopped grapefruit and not grapefruit hopped. With the grapefruit rinds that we saved, I thinly sliced them to add into the bottle. So after making some slight adjustments, I was ready to bottle them. When bottling, you want to leave a little less than an inch of headspace. This is a good rule for the majority of bottling to keep your brew from oxidizing. When too much headspace is left in kombucha, mini scobies can form at the top. No worries, they're completely edible, but it might surprise you when you take your first taste of the finished product. I added in around 8 pieces of grapefruit rind to each bottle to help with taste and carbonation. Ginger is another thing you can add to give your booch a carbonated kick. I later did. I'll be keeping these out at 75 degrees Fahrenheit or 23 degrees Celsius for 3 to 4 days to help the carbonation get started. During that time, the kombucha yeast will eat the sugars, leaving behind CO2, which creates the carbonation. This has been a great learning process for me. I'm realizing there are already a lot of things that I could have done better, and I'm getting excited for the next batch to be finished. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for the tasting.